had just turned 17, a milestone that should have been about newfound freedom, a driver's license, and dreams of college. Instead, it marked the day I found myself behind the counter at McDonald's in our sleepy Louisiana town, flipping patties and serving up smiles. My shift was a standard 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. Working at McDonald's wasn't glamorous, but it was something. It meant Mama wouldn't have to worry about my senior year expenses or how we'd afford the college application fees. And maybe it meant we wouldn't have to survive on ramen noodles every other day. I wanted to ease the burden off my mom. She was a hardworking woman, juggling 2 jobs and still managing to find time to ask about my day. After school, I'd slip into that red and yellow uniform, plaster a smile on my face, and stand behind the counter, waiting for the next customer to step up. Each face was a blur, just another hungry soul in the maze of life until he walked in, the man with the charcoal gray eyes. They reminded me of the storm clouds that rolled over the bayou before a heavy rain. He was dressed sharp, a 3-piece suit that looked out of place in our fast food joint. Our eyes locked for a second too long, his gaze icy cold, and a shiver ran down my spine. I brushed it off as nerves, my first customer jitters. I thought of him as some rich dude or lawyer, just coming in for the Wi-Fi since he always had a laptop in hand. Over the following weeks, the man became a regular, always at the same time, always ordering the same thing, a McChicken and a small coffee, no sugar, no cream. But it wasn't the monotony of his order that unnerved me. It was the hunger in his gaze. It wasn't for the food. He had an odd air about him, the kind that raises the hairs at the back of your neck. But he was polite, always smiled, and left me a tip. Not many customers gave tips, but he did. One particular evening, after serving him his meal, I glanced outside and saw him sitting in his fancy black sedan, eating his McChicken while watching me through the window. He raised his coffee cup almost mockingly, and our eyes met again. This time, the shiver was undeniable. His visits became more frequent. Some days, he'd come in twice. He'd always sit in the car afterward watching me. He'd always raise his cup. His silent salute became a gross routine. I tried telling Mama. She was concerned, but she brushed it off, saying, "Honey, the world's full of strange folks. Keep your head down and mind your business." But this was different. This was a predator, a stalker. I could feel it in my bones. One evening after a particularly grueling shift, I noticed a figure loitering near the bus stop. It was the same man. My heart thumped wildly in my chest as I pretended not to notice him. It had to be a coincidence, right? I told myself that it was, but the tremble in my legs told a different story. Days turned into weeks, and Mr. Creeps became a regular part of my life. He was there at work, waiting at the bus stop, in the grocery store aisles. Always watching, always waiting. His gray eyes always following me. It was as if I had my very own Grim Reaper. Fear became my constant companion. I'd jump at every shadow, my heart would race at the sound of every car engine. Sleep became a luxury, as every night was plagued with nightmares of those storm cloud eyes. One day on my way home from work, I felt the familiar prickle of being watched. I turned around to see the charcoal gray eyes watching me from a few feet away. My blood ran cold. My home wasn't just my sanctuary anymore. It was a target. I decided to confide in Officer Daniels, our neighborhood cop, but without concrete evidence, he couldn't do much. It would be my word against his. Still, he promised to keep an eye out, told me to call him if anything felt wrong. I left him feeling a little safer, a little braver. Eventually, I stopped going to McDonald's. Mama was furious, but she didn't understand. I was a prisoner, shackled by fear and paranoia. I was stalked, hunted, by a man whose name I didn't know, but whose eyes I would never forget. Graduation arrived, but the joy of it was swallowed by my dread. I saw him there, sitting amongst the proud parents and beaming relatives. His eyes bore into me as I walked on the stage to collect my diploma. A milestone of my life was reduced to another spectacle for his perverse pleasure. Summer rolled in, hot and muggy, like Louisiana's signature welcome mat. I got accepted into a college up north. There I would find my escape, my freedom from the storm cloud eyes. Yet the terror didn't dissipate. It clung like the aftertaste of stale fries, the memory of his smoky gaze and drawn-out silences curdling into a malignant dread. He'd extracted a piece of my youthful naivety and supplanted it with gnawing unease. In the course of 2 years, the world shifted on its axis, jolting me from a sense of relief to a cold, heart-stopping realization. McDonald's, my perpetual shadow, was sentenced for abduction and homicide. The news reports echoed through the chambers of my mind. It could have been me. It could have been me. But it wasn't. I was the lucky one. Or was I? The stalking morphed into something beyond eerie. It was a life-changing nightmare that carved deep grooves of paranoia into the fabric of my existence. It wasn't the type of wound that bled or scabbed over, but a spectral scar persistently throbbing under the guise of normality. The terror of this reality, the shadow lurking in mundane life, was that the monsters were no longer confined to bedtime stories or movie screens. They were flesh and blood, flesh and bone, wearing 3-piece suits, bearing quiet smiles and a credit card for a McChicken. They moved amidst us, prowling under the sun, concealing their monstrous tendencies under a thin veil of ordinariness. It was a grim testament to the world's real horror show, the reality in which we exist. A chilling theater where the monsters weren't mythical creatures, but humans hiding behind the storm cloud eyes. And it was in this theater that my heart, no longer merely a vital organ, but a chainsaw, had to rev up, ready to fight, ready to survive, ready to overcome. For the world had taught me a harsh lesson. Fear didn't die, it only changed its mask.